Let's bring in Albert Breer. He's the Monday morning quarterback, senior NFL reporter. How did you celebrate Aaron Rodgers news there, Albert?
Yeah, with a big sigh of relief that it didn't happen on Friday.
Did you think it was going? I thought it was going to happen on Friday. I thought it was going to happen today.
Yeah, I had a feeling it was going to happen this week because I know yeah, I don't think next week was a drop dead deadline for the Steelers because I they weren't pushy with him, but I do think they articulated to him, hey, it'd be important, for you to be here for that mini camp from June 10th to the 12th. So, if you're going to take part in that mini camp, it probably means you want to get in at the end of the week. And, as it turns out, he is flying there on a Friday. So like it actually is happening on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the news got out on Thursday, in all likelihood, because he had to plan to get there on Friday.
It's a short-term fix, but it kind of kicks the can down the road that this is
Yeah.
1 year. And
Yeah.
that's what still surprises me, that they're all in for 1 year.
So do you remember you and I sitting at the Super Bowl and we were talking about Matthew Stafford and I brought up the Steelers as a potential suitor for him? And I think, it made some headlines and people were like, whoa, what do you mean like the Steelers would do that? Yeah, I kind of had an inkling that they had this discussion internally. They were never bringing Russell Wilson back. And I think if they were bringing Justin Fields back, they wanted to continue working with him, but it wasn't necessarily going to be as the starter. And I really kind of as I looked at their situation, and one of the reasons I use them as like the perfect suitor for Stafford applies to Rodgers too. They're so leveraged for right now. You know what I mean? And if you look at their roster, TJ Watt's turning 31, Minka Fitzpatrick's turning 29, Cam Hayward's in the back end of his career, DK Metcalf, who they just acquired, is on his third contract now. Now he's not old, but he has been beat up, and again on his third contract. They really are in this spot where it's like if they want to win with the core that they've built, then it almost has to be right now. And yes, they're still chasing the mistake of taking Kenny Pickett in the first round. But the way I look at this is taking a quarterback in the first round wasn't going to solve anything this year with this group. I think the guys that you were looking at there were developmental at best. Like you were probably looking at all right, we can get the most out of this guy in 26 or 27. And that doesn't really help you with the core that you have right now. So if you wanted to get somebody for right now, I think the question becomes, do you want to try to hit a single or a double? And this is no affront to these guys, like a Daniel Jones, trade for a Kirk Cousins, whatever it is. Or do you want to take a big swing for the fences? And I think that's what this is. It's like if you want to win a Super Bowl with TJ Watt, if you want to win a Super Bowl with Minka Fitzpatrick, if you want to win a Super Bowl with Cam Hayward, who's given your franchise so much over the years, how are you going to accomplish that? And yeah, there's a chance that, Aaron Rodgers gets hurt or the age shows or whatever it is. So you might take that big swing and miss. But he's also got the best chance of putting one over the fence for you. And so I think that's sort of the way the Steelers viewed this is with this core, with this short window that they have left with this core of players, they couldn't swing for a single or a double. They had to swing for the fences.
Talking to Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback. The Lions offseason, pretty rough. You lose your coordinators. Now you lose your starting center. What does that do to you in your eyes as far as being a Super Bowl contender, if anything?
Tests you in a lot of ways. And look, I think part of this is that they got the bonus year for Ben Johnson. So this would have happened gradually if Ben Johnson had went sort of through the natural order of things, but he really liked it in Detroit. He thought he could be the extra year or two of development could be useful for him. And so he stays the extra year. You could argue he stayed an extra 2 years because he did have opportunities 2 years ago. So now you're dealing with that all at once, where you have attrition both on offense and defense, at the top of the chart. And then Frank Ragnow, I'm not going to minimize that loss at all. Like that, he was a rock for them, a foundation piece for them in a really important position. And you're taking that out of what has been maybe the biggest strength on the team over the last, couple of years is your offensive line. So I sort of look at it you remember those great giant defensive lines, they kept feeding that pipeline, right? Like they kept drafting guys and drafting guys and drafting guys. So a strength would always stay a strength. So like, the quick question here is that as big a strength for them? Is that as much of their identity now as it was before, as you're breaking in a new offensive coordinator with Johnny Morton taking over for Ben Johnson? Look, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot, and it's going to test a lot of people there. Is there going to be a drop off from Ragnow to Glasgow or Ratledge or whoever winds up playing center? I think you certainly have to account for that. If Ragnow's an all-pro player, is there going to be a drop off at the coordinator spots? You have to be prepared for that, even if you think the world of guys who are replacing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. So it's a lot, no question, and it's in a division that's going to be pretty unforgiving this year too.
The Colts situation, it looks like Daniel Jones may win that job by
Mhm.
default with Anthony Richardson now, the shoulder injury. And I started to think about they drafted Anthony Richardson the way NBA teams will draft a player who's a project. Like, this guy, Ace Bailey, who played at Rutgers. And you're
Yep.
like, man, he's really athletic. Can he play? I don't
Mm.
know, but he's athletic.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson struggled to keep his job in college. And then we found that, he was gassed during a game and took himself out. And I don't know if we like the philosophy of drafting that where you just base it off 1 year. And I mean, this may go down as a huge, huge whiff for that organization.
I mean, he's so raw coming out. I think everybody saw the talent and ability, but you have to, demonstrate an ability to actually do it on the field. And there wasn't a lot of that. So they were really projecting and, with Shane Steichen coming in and how, Shane was a part of developing Jalen Hurts, they had some confidence that like, hey, we can take this kind of ball of clay and shape it into something. Even though he only started 13 games in college, which is an absurdly low number. I'd argue this is also the result of like, sort of predetermining. And I think this is where you have to be really careful, Dan, predetermining that this is the draft where we're going to take a
Oh,
quarterback, right?
yes, yes, yes.
Like I just and you remember it as well as I do, right? Like so, Luck retires after 18. No one saw it coming. Brissett in 19, Rivers in 20, Wentz in 21, Ryan in 22. Owner gets fed up. Frank Reich gets fired in the middle of the year. Jeff Saturday put in, come hell or high water, we're gonna get our quarterback in 2023. Well, is the reality of it, they took the third quarterback in a two quarterback draft. You know what I mean? And that's how again, we've seen it time and again. That's how EJ Manuel goes to Buffalo, 16th overall. It's how Kenny Pickett goes in the first round to Pittsburgh.
Christian
It's how
Ponder.
Christian Ponder, yeah, to the Vikings. Like if you predetermine, I think like teams were prone to that happening this year, like where it just you have to draft a player. You can't just draft a position. And I do think to some degree the Colts were in this spot where they were drafting the position in 2023 because they were under something of a mandate to do so because they had such a revolving door at that spot. I think it's a huge, huge, huge red flag for any team thinking like going into this year, yes, we're taking a quarterback next year. And here's the other thing, like what did it cost you? Well, it really cost you three off seasons of finding a quarterback because you didn't get it right in 23.
Yeah.
And then the last 2 years, you've just backstopped Richardson last year, with Joe Flacco and this year with Daniel Jones. So you've ostensibly lost. I mean, unless Daniel Jones winds up being the quarterback of the future, I'm not ruling anything out, but you've lost three more off seasons now as a result of that pick. It can be really damaging to a franchise for sure.
Where do we stand with the Stephon Diggs boat party story?
Yeah. I would say so first of all, like I think the first thing you wanna lay out here is how important culture has been for Mike Vrabel and trying to establish what he wants to build there. I think they followed the Commanders' blueprint to some degree. If you look at all the guys that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters signed in the 2024 offseason, almost every one of them had a connection to someone on the coaching staff. And it was because they wanted to know that they were getting the right types of guys to plug into their program in year one. And, Mike did a lot of that in the offseason. Milton Williams was an exception, but he was A plus character in Philly. almost everybody else that they signed had some sort of background. And this one, Diggs was sort of the dice roll. So I think this happening this early, and it's not so much being on a boat on Memorial Day weekend or even the bag of drugs. It's like, how do you allow yourself to be filmed like that? Now you've created a week-long story for everybody else in the team. So I think the big thing was, did he make it out of that week? Did he sit down and have an honest conversation with Mike Vrabel? Was he straightforward with him? And can they move forward? Now, this doesn't disappear because if something else were to happen, of course, like, he already has a strike against him, right? Like it's not like it just vanishes off the ledger. Because if something else were to happen, then like, I think that then, you would certainly look back and say, okay, this is twice now, dude. But I do think it's that the juncture it's happening can be fortuitous for the Patriots, and they could say, okay, like now, like this is what people were worried about with you. We really need you to be a leader for the team. And the good news is, like, I think Steph is deep down a good guy. His work ethic has always been beyond reproach. He's been a captain for multiple teams. Like, I think that there's a good path out of this, but it certainly doesn't disappear from the ledger.
Allegedly, drugs.
Did I not say allegedly? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have no idea what was in the bag.
Yeah.
I wasn't on the boat. Wasn't invited.
Yeah. Would you have gone on the boat if invited?
Sure. Did they lose your invite in the mail too?
I don't think I want to be on that boat. You know,
I would go on for journalistic purposes.
Of course you would. I would go on for Cardi B. Okay. This team will have the number 1 pick in the draft this upcoming season.
Oh, that's a tough one because this one's going to get aggregated on. Man, New Orleans would be interesting, wouldn't it? If they had the first pick and they had a chance to take a quarterback. And would Arch Manning declare? I don't even want to get into that because we still don't know on Arch like how good he's going to be when he's a starter for a full year. But that's going to be the storyline, right? I mean, his family history says there's no way he's coming out after 1 year starting, right? Like
But if the Saints have the number 1 pick in the draft,
then I mean, like, wouldn't that be tempting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And their quarterback situation. I mean, the Saints are an interesting one because I don't think it's a bad team. Like, I don't think it's a bad roster. Like, I think their offensive line actually has a chance to be really good with Kelvin Banks coming in there. The defensive line still has, I think, promise. Maybe you get a little bit more out of Chase Young this year. Cam Jordan's back for his 25th year. So like, I think that there are elements of a good team there. And I think for a young quarterback coming in, eventually this could be a really good spot. I don't know how quarterback's going to undermine them this year. Like the back end of the defense, I'm not sure how that's going to look. Like, I think the lines give them an opportunity to stay in games, but the rest of it is kind of like, let's see what this looks like. And yeah, I mean, wouldn't that definitely be the storyline though, right?
Oh,
like,
yes.
Yeah, if we get to December and they're near the top of the draft order and Texas is like in the national title picture, yeah, it could be pretty interesting.
Albert, have a great weekend. The Monday morning quarterback. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah. You imagine? Feels like Arch is going to stay for 2 years. And I'm sure that would be something that the Manning family would advise him. Get some starts. Get some big starts under your belt. Get 25, close to 30 starts under your belt. Then you'll be ready. But can you pass up the opportunity to be the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints?